everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Healthy Minds. I am your host, Brittany Pope, licensed professional counselor. This is a collaboration with the Ketchikan Wellness Coalition, which the mission is to spread wellness and reduce the stigma in Ketchikan. I am here with our guest today, Miss Gerry Balluta, and I'll let her introduce herself.
I'm Gerry Balluta.
I think I said that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we need to let people know twice. That
Right.
way, if they didn't catch it the first time,
Yes.
they can't forget it the second
and
time.
I'll let them know it again.
Yes,
too.
yes.
Okay, so we're here with Gerry. Gerry, what do you do in the community?
I am a mental health first aid instructor.
Okay, and what does that mean?
Well, we can respond to people in the community out and about for first aid response, right? If somebody falls over, has maybe having a heart attack,
Right.
You know, we're trained with CPR, those life-saving techniques. But there's also mental health first aid in responding to people when they could be in a crisis, a mental health crisis. And it could be an acute crisis, it could be something that they experience chronically, but people are nervous when they experience people sometimes in those situations. What do you do? How do you respond? That comfort level is really important too. There's a lot of stigma wrapped around mental health and the symptoms, how it, you know, how people
Exhibit it.
Yeah,
Totally.
Yeah. How do you respond? How do you recognize those symptoms? How do you see and respond appropriately to not, you know, cause more of a problem, to help them and not hinder them?
I love that you say help them and not hinder them, because I think a lot of the times we get kind of deer in headlights, and even being around people with mental illness on a regular basis, for me, sometimes it's hard for me to respond when I don't have my mental health therapist hat on.
Right.
So that this is like first aid except for mental health.
Yes. And I can tell you that I've worked in the healthcare field for almost 20 years, and I have used the skills in this training more often when I'm out and about in the community than in my actual career, like in clinic. I've used it in the grocery store line, at the post office, on the bus, different places like that, in a school. Those places we will come in contact with people that are most likely going to be having issues. They're out and about, you run into them. So when you don't have that hat on, you know, it's almost easier to do it in a clinic or in office when you're in that mindset, but when you just happen, you know, across it. And that's the point of this training, is it's for everyone in the community. It's for our faith community, you know, our pastors. People, when they have trouble, maybe anxiety, depression, things going on in their life, they don't understand how to deal with it, they oftentimes go to their pastor at their church first. That's a real important person to be getting this training. Bartenders.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, first responders.
Right.
All these types of people, grocery store clerks. These are the type of people that are going to see those situations up close and personal. And like I said, on the bus, that happens all the time. Ask any bus driver in this town if they've seen on a daily basis people who are struggling with a mental health crisis in some sort of, you know, form, and they will say yes every single day.
Well, and you make a really good point where you say we cross it anywhere. And so I think, and we're also not, I think it's almost like this Ketchikan crud that's going around. You're not immune to it.
No.
Like if you get around the right crowd and the right person, you could also catch that, right? And it's the same with anxiety, or stress. If you're in a stressful situation, you might experience maybe a mental health crisis when you haven't before.
Sure.
So it's interesting. So what is the main goal of mental health first aid?
The main goal is to respond to people in that crisis situation on the spot, to help them through it and get them where they need to go. Whether it's immediate intervention right away because they could harm themselves or others, or directing them to professional help. Also, a big part of the course is the stigma around it, and to help people understand and recognize different mental health disorders, what types of crisis they could be in, you know.
Right. So I like how you educate people on the stigmas and also different types of mental illnesses. Are there specific ones you cover, or do you cover, well, you can't cover the entire DSM in a mental health training.
Right.
Because it's a 2-day training, right?
1-day training.
1 day,
it's an
okay.
8-hour course.
Okay. So do you cover like depression, anxiety, like the very general basic ones? Or do you go specifically into personality disorders?
We do. We cover the main highlights of most mental health disorders. We spend a lot of time on anxiety and depression because that's the most common.
Okay.
We go into personality disorders. We talk about substance abuse and how those can impact and cause,
Right.
Psychosis, for example. It's just schizophrenia. We talk about suicide. A big chunk is on suicide.
Which is huge in this community right now.
It is.
There is an increasing trend in the amount of suicides that we have had in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And so when you go over suicide, do you go over what does a plan look like, or what does that part of it look like?
We really talk to people. So I don't know if you're aware of gatekeeper training. Have you done the gatekeeper training? That's very specific on suicide and going into the plan and those types of things. This is getting people okay with asking, do you have a plan? Crossing out those lines over that uncomfortable step.
Right.
It's really weird and you don't always know what to do. Do I ask? Do I say anything? This is just making people comfortable. It's not extremely in depth, but just enough to get people so they know what to ask, what they should ask, what not to ask, the wrong response versus the right response, but that real basic just to get them to that point where they can get that person to the help that they need.